So, what we are talking about today, we are still covering the systematic theology for non-Christians. Now, as we go through some of the topics that we're going to get into over the next few weeks, you really need to have some of this grounding down. Now, we'll review a little bit of it as we go along, but I want you guys to be aware of some of the topics, because what you need to understand is the reason there's a system is because these different topics are built on each other. So last time we talked about God. We talked about him being a creator. We talked about him being holy. We talked about him being creative and powerful and all of these things. Those attributes of God are going to play into some of the future discussions. The two aspects I want to talk about today are specifically tied into what is called anthropology. Now, anthropology is the doctrine of humanity, or the doctrine of man, as in mankind. And so what we are going to be dealing with is, what does the Bible have to say about humankind? First of all, as you read through Genesis 1, 2, and 3, you get the picture that mankind is created by God, and that mankind is created by God in God's own image. Now, there's a lot of debate about what that means. Michael Heiser has a really good discussion on it. He goes into some of his he basically reasons through some of the different positions of where people stand on what the image of God is. A lot of people will say the image of God is our appearance, and again, part of the problem of that is males and females have very distinct appearances for the most part, and so which one of those is God's image? The other problem with that is, if someone's born without an arm, are they not completely in God's image? Or if someone's not born yet, are they not yet in God's image? There's various people who don't look like other people. So which person is like the stereotype? Which one is the template? So it doesn't appear that the physical appearance is what the image of God is talking about. The other reason we would shy away from that explanation also has to do with the fact that the Bible says God is a spirit. And so as you deal with the idea of God being a spirit, he doesn't have a physical body per se. Now, Jesus took on a physical body, but that's not what we're talking about. And so this idea that the physical appearance of man has to do with God's image doesn't seem to be the case. Also, the idea of intellect, the idea of having a soul, some of those things, those don't seem to fit as well, because, for instance, the intellect, what if someone's mentally retarded? What if someone's mentally handicapped? What if someone's in a vegetative state? Does that mean they're no longer in the image of God? Or is it just potential to be the image of God? Like, how does that work? If someone's more intelligent, do they have more of the image of God on them? Like, how does that work if intelligence is the image of God? That's why it doesn't work either. The idea of having a soul, we could get into some of that discussion. The idea of nefesh and some of these words that you see in the Hebrew have more to do with the breath, have more to do with the fact that man is alive. And that there are other passages that talk about animals also having this breath. And so it seems to be that mankind is an embodied soul, he's an embodied spirit, and he has breath, which is something he has when he's alive. So again, those things don't seem to be unique to humanity. There are certain parts of man being a spirit that are unique to him, but again, those points don't seem to build the case of what the image of God is. Here's where Heiser would go with it, and here's where I go with it. I believe the image of God has more to do with the fact that mankind is God's representative on earth. Now, mankind can do a better or lesser job of that. So he can do like a really great job and really represent God well, or he can do a really poor job and represent God really poorly. It's kind of like this. If I were sent as an ambassador to a foreign country, I am the representative of my country to that country. I could be a great ambassador or a terrible ambassador. I'm still an ambassador. And so I think that's more of the image bearer, or what that is implying. So as we look at God creating man, man is created in God's image, which means mankind is representing God on this planet, it's a huge responsibility. That also adds value to humanity, because if I am just as much an image bearer of God as you are, that means I don't have the right to take your life unless God has allowed it, unless God has ordained it. And so there are times in the Bible where God says these are the crimes that deserve the death penalty. but thou shalt not murder. I mean, that's in the Ten Commandments when it says you shall not kill. It has to do with murder, because right after that he sends them to war. And so obviously it's okay to kill in war, but it's not okay to just randomly kill for whatever reason. And so there's some of those truths that we need to understand. Now, moving along, there is a second aspect to humankind that we have to understand. That second aspect to humankind is this idea that mankind is fallen. I want you to imagine if you got too close to the edge of a cliff, you toppled off the edge of a cliff, and you were falling. And regrettably, this is a bottomless hole, and so you're just falling and falling and falling. And while you're falling, you meet someone else who you kind of fancy, and you guys get married and you have a kid, and that kid now obviously is falling just alongside of you. And let's say that kid is an intelligent young rip, and he manages to manufacture himself a parachute, and so he's not falling quite as fast as you guys are, and he's falling at a quite slower rate, but he's still falling. That is pretty much the picture of humankind. Adam and Eve were given a test. We talked about that a few episodes ago. They were given a test in the Garden of Eden. They failed. And in that state, they fell. They had fallen from grace. They'd fallen from the holy position they had been in. And in falling, they are now sinners. The taint of sin is now upon them. And it's almost like that idea of you fell off that cliff and you're falling. And to be right with God, you got to be back up on that ledge. You got to live perfectly. And so the idea is there's no way you're getting back up to that ledge on your own. You can do all your good works. You can be smart as you want. You can try all these things. There's no way you're getting back up to that state. And in fact, God says if you've sinned once, it's as if you've broken all the laws. So there's just no hope. There is hope. Just kidding. But I mean, there's no hope on your own. And so this idea of what we call depravity is this concept that humankind is completely tainted by their sin. They're completely stained. They're all fallen. In fact, the Bible says in Romans, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Okay? So if you can imagine, you're in a jumping contest across the Grand Canyon. It doesn't matter how strongly you jump, none of you are making it all the way across. You're all going to fall short. And that's the idea. God says, this is my perfection, and you don't need it. And so what we need to understand as we look at mankind and as we look through the Bible and some of these various doctrines, we need to understand that the doctrine of depravity means not that mankind is as bad as he could be. It means that all mankind and everything about mankind is tainted by sin. And so there's a bunch of different words for sin. There's a bunch of different concepts for sin, but we're just going to use the general word. So I want you guys to understand that as we study out all these other things, mankind is both a representative of God on earth. He's God's image bearer. He's special. But also, mankind as a whole is tainted by sin and corrupted by it. So those are the two aspects I want you guys to understand. It's a shorter episode this week. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of it. And we will dig into more next time. But that's where we're going to end it this week. Again, guys, I hope you have enjoyed these episodes. As you tune in, pay attention to some of the book reviews that have been coming out as well. Let me know what you thought of some of those books. And again, if you like this video, remember to click that like button. Remember to subscribe. And again, if you're one who is prone to click the bell, click that bell icon so you're notified when I post new stuff. And I will see you guys later. And this has been an episode of The Janus Project. I'll see you guys next week.